Hi. This is probably going to be kind of long, so I apologize for that. I marked up a few of the drawings to give you an idea of why we're doing certain things and what has to happen first to get started. Um, so the big part of this is because it's over the aquarium, the air inside is warm and very humid, and they have to have a certain glass that does not give them much thermal protection. So um, none of the glass actually meets the performance they would need to prevent condensation forming. Since the glass can't control the temperature shift, it pulls the skylight frame in. So the skylight frame virtually will condensate on all surfaces. So a big part of the work is to build an enclosure on this yellow outline line to try to keep the warm, humid air inside without letting it get to the cold surfaces of exterior metal. So that's a big part of the flashing work. You see that's not that normal. We're trying to build a barrier for the inside. I think everybody understands the system can never control all the condensate, but we're giving it our best effort to control as much as we can. Obviously, they would have had this problem a lot by all the gutters that were inside the building. Um, they're upgrading the glass. I don't know that anybody knows. They've acknowledged they may have to address it with HVAC because you can only do so much with passive skylight framing to control that. Just letting moist air sit on a cold skylight. So anyway, that's the reason behind it all. Um, these purple lines are just an indication of an inclined surface that we'll look at the very end of this video. And I just marked it here just to mention that that's the surfaces I was talking about. The big issue holding us up right now is this gutter right here. It was existing, but they stripped it off, and now they have to replace it with new, and that is kind of messing with the yellow line details. So we're trying to figure out, or they're trying to figure out how they want to address that, and we'll get into that as we go. The other thing is the dimensions and how to do your layout. So the skylight is based on this 12-foot 11 from the outside face of the angle here to the point of the concrete there, theoretically. Concrete's probably not that perfect. The angle's probably not perfectly straight, but that's the basic size. Now when we figure out what you want to use as a measuring surface, we can give you numbers. It kind of seems like you're going to need a string to set your best fit from here and then measure from that string up to this edge angle so that can be put in straight, and off that edge angle you could locate your support. And I think you should make the skylight track as good as you can with the header because we have more misalignment flexibility at the curb. This roof coming in on this incline makes it a little trickier. We can take some of the adjustment up here, but I think skew towards lining up better at the head, but I think the curb's going to be easier to get your start from. Give me a call. I don't know that I have the words that'll communicate that. I think you probably understand it better than I, just with me having said what I said. So let's go through the details one by one. Well, just certain details one by one. This is the current curb detail, but I think it's going to change. This gutter is gone. I don't think they were supposed to take it away, but now it's gone, and clearly the whole team is looking at it. The architect and Pepper's envelope consultant, they're not really talking to me. I'm like, okay, we'll see what they come up with. FA 57, 100, 65, 64, and like A through Q, and 58 are all the pieces that we were going to put on here to cover the existing gutter. I think those are all junk at this point, but they haven't really told us, are they going to leave some of the gutter behind, or are they going to remake all new? I think once you make some new, you kind of have to follow through and make them all new. And they've taken enough off that it would look funny if they didn't. But so don't throw them away, but be aware those are the parts that probably aren't going to be used. There's a bunch of styrofoam here that you may have a little bit of use for. It wasn't really insulating. I was using it as a separator to keep the aluminum off of the existing steel gutter. So that's that part. I think it's going. We're going to look at a revised detail that they're considering next. There's this little J flashing here, which is trying to make a seal to our frame. I have it sealed on the inside, and then I used to have a little gap here, and then I filled it in with sealant without thinking. And I think we should have a little 1/4-inch hole here, so that if any water gets in here, it can get into the rafter and drain out. It's a little bit of a leak for the vapor barrier, but I think it should drain. If the architects visit, we could probably ask them, but I don't want to start a whole great big discussion either. So that's what we're doing here. This is trying to create a vapor barrier. There's a little L flashing up here. That could be set in sealant on this piece. It's not hugely important, but I think it would be nice if we did it. And when this piece runs past the panel splice, just clip the vertical leg and then fold it down so your panel joint can go through and seal up, and that'll be fine. The big concern with these panels has been if somebody steps on this. That's why there's this 4x4 angle underneath, so that if there's any standing load on it or somebody steps, there's something underneath it to hold it up. With the rafters every 2 feet, it's pretty stout. I don't think anything's going to happen, but you want to make sure that the panels bear down good and the clips hold it tight to the angle so that it feels solid. That's all this big arrow is about, is that. There's a little flashing tray here at each rafter that goes over. It's sort of a splash guard to take any water draining out the rafter and just direct it down towards the weep. And they did want to make sure that we sealed all around the support, cover up the 1/2-inch spacer plate, and seal the screw heads, just so that if there's any water in here, or more importantly, I think the worry is that in winter it's going to freeze up. So we want to make sure that water can't get underneath the support to find the bolt holes. So it's real important to do it down here at the curb. In fact, they asked me to put this hole in the middle in case the rafter froze up so water could still get out of the rafter, because we are using the inside of the rafter as a drain pipe. Something to keep in mind. They asked us to put a little block here. This is supposed to be 2 inches of insulation on top of our ice and water and between our flashing. Styrofoam usually runs a little heavy. I'd kind of make it a 2 1/8 space, 2 1/8, maybe a little more. I don't know if you want to make some blocks that you could just put in there so that when the flashing gets anchored down, it doesn't squeeze shut and freeze out the roofer later, because he's got to slip this insulation in. He's got some kind of caulking to do here. We weren't able to take our Grace Ultra and work it into his roof because his roof has got special stuff that they use, and it isn't compatible with that. It also doesn't bond the painted aluminum. We tried to do stainless steel, but then it didn't quite detail out the way they wanted. So our ice and water is going to start at the tip of this angle, then go up and across, and we leave all this other stuff open for them. I guess they're going to spray foam it, and then we'll see where that all goes. But let's look at the next detail for this Grace Ultra detail and where that's headed. So, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, here's our yellow line from the first page we looked at. It goes up to here. This flashing bridges the air barrier, and it goes through the bar to the glass, and that's our interior air seal. I think they're looking at how does this new gutter going to seal to the beam and around the beam, and I think that may be where they use some Dow 1, 2, 3 or some other kind of stuff, but that's not our work. We may have to go back and put this caulk joint in, so we want to make sure that the scaffold is still there when they get this gutter on, so that we can caulk that joint. I don't think they're talking about 1, 2, 3 here, but they were worried about something getting into this space behind our flashing. And that is going to lead them to their only places where they hit beams. They have to seal that up, and then they should be okay. So the Grace Ultra is coming up the angle and then here. And I think we can just fold it down here so that when they put their new gutter on, it's going to bear on that rubber, and that should give them a real good seal there. But I worry a little bit about a screw hitting our Ultra on the blind side of the angle to them, because ideally we're going to be farther along by the time they get the gutter in. So I kind of marked a filler as a first placeholder, shall we call it. And I wonder if we take some of that styrofoam from the first detail and just break off a strip and kind of wedge it in here. Can we take our Grace Ultra and just incline it and then go up and wrap down? Then there's a little void here, so when they run a screw in to hold their gutter down, they're not going to hit a Grace Ultra and put a penetration in it. And that should get them from the gutter to the rubber and then over to here. And I think that's what they're kind of trying to do. The seal's going to connect them to here. This piece also creates an inner backup barrier for our exterior seals, and that's sort of an orange line running here. That's what this flashing and this caulk joint is for. And that goes with our base flashing out to the front face, backing up all the seals here. So that's kind of the thought behind it all. We got our exterior barrier, we got a backup, and then we're trying to work out how the inner seal works. And right now nobody's quite sure what's happening right here. I think this detail works better because it arguably creates the air barrier they want for the inside. But if they have this one as well, I don't know that they need to worry about the space that much, but I'll leave it up to them to decide. So the spray foam, that's up to them. I'm not sure how that'll work. And this joint is not by us, it's by somebody else. Hopefully that helps. Like I said, if we have a string here to kind of get a good average to the curb in the head, leaning towards the header, then we can give you a number from the string to the theoretical position of the crossbar so that you can set the frame right. Or we can go to the support if you want to do that. And I think you already know the support comes with one pre-assembly bolt. And when you're ready to level, you take that out and then you're going to field drill the rafters where you want to lock them in. So let's see. So that's our alternate curb, which I think is going to be adopted, but we have to wait until we hear. This is a crossbar. Again, there were gutters here, which they stripped off, and the owner definitely said they wanted to keep them. Now those gutters used to go up and over, so this flashing wasn't going to be needed, but we still made 20 10-foot lengths just in case, because we really didn't know what they were going to try to do. Nobody could see the opening through the opaque glass. So we have the material there, and you were good to put the primer down so we could put the Grace Ultra across the top. But it's just on these purlins. We don't own anything on all the other sloping beams. So I think we should put that there, but we do need to hear from the design architects and Pepper's guy. Do they want to do the gutter like I'm sketching it here so they can slip it up under that leg? I don't think there's another choice, but we got to get them to tell us one way or the other. Another thing to consider is this crossbar is not going to be centered on this beam. I think it typically rides higher. You're going to move this support where it needs to go and then field drill the rafter. So once you get the curb and the head, you put the support in at the midspan, put it in, and then you can do your adjust for the slope and drill the rafter. But don't worry that they're not lining up with the crossbar. The existing didn't. It just got drawn aligned because when we started, we didn't know where to put it anyway. So this is the most important piece of the whole system, which I think I will come back to because I have some special pictures of it. But this is what's going to allow us to carry more water. This condensate gutter, our typical condensate gutter, doesn't collect a lot of water and it doesn't take much to plug it. So what we did is rather than try to transfer from here down to the rafter, we want to run it into the rafter through this little smiley face notch. And that's what this cover's for. That allows the crossbars to be notched for drop-in, so you can build as much frame or as little as you need to on a day, and that we can still drain water through here. So this covers the notch out and carries the water. So it's really important how you seal this. And we played quite a bit with making it. It was difficult to make. We eventually found a really good way to do it that looks very nice. You're going to want to use white caulk, and let me open up one of the pictures here for you. So on the inside, this empty space where I haven't cross-hatched it, that's where the notch out is in the crossbar. So you want caulk on the vertical edges and all the way around here. And you're going to want to use white caulk for that. So you're going to want to bed it in the bottom of the crossbar. And then the other surface is going to be what presses against the rafter. So you have caulk inside the channel and on the stubby side of the flange. And then right here there's a little crack, so make sure you get caulk to cover that. We didn't want to weld there because it would block it getting in. This weld here worked really well. Kept a nice profile, kept everything looking good. So you're going to want to caulk these surfaces around this edge up here. This is a folded seam, so you should be good. This is just a crack, so it needs a backer to be wiped over it, and this is a crack to wipe over. So that will get you all the surfaces you need. And then when you go to put it in, you're going to be setting it in sealant against the rafter with the stubby side set in caulk, and on the crossbar, the inside of the channel. Make sure you use white caulk to match the white paint, and I will trust your expertise with the caulk to keep it as neat as you can. It didn't seem too hard to wipe some of the extra off with a paper towel or something, and I think that will. It flows so much more water than our typical gutter. It works very well. I've tried it with a bottle of water at my desk with this little sample piece, and I can pour the water at a pretty good rate. So if they have more condensation than that, I don't know what anybody would do to try to even attempt to control it. So hopefully that helps with that. If you're not sure, give me or Zach a call and we'll go over it with you again. So this is the header. And again, we have our yellow. That's the air barrier on the inside face. We want to go from the concrete all the way around. There is no special angle piece here, but we have a flashing that goes over to there, and that bridges that little gap. Again, it could be set in sealant right there on that flange. I'm kind of torn on that. I think you could do it. I suppose if you were going to leave a little pocket for drainage, leave it open on here at the low edge, and then it'll carry it and go through. You've got the cover, so you're going to want to do the cover before you put this on and then bolt it over. You're also going to want to leave the channels off so you can get access to these two bolts after you get it leveled out. So let's start with the flashing that you got to do first. You've got this little edge angle. That should follow the face of the concrete. Just go where the concrete goes, put it on, and then the Grace Ultra is going to have to go over that. And then this 45-degree bend piece is what's going to have to install before the frame. So this corner is what we're going to call the 12-foot 11 point. But we'll give you a dimension back to the string once we have an idea where the string's going to go, I guess, or to the curb or something, so you can add and subtract. But right now that corner is set dead on at 12 foot 11 from the face of the steel angle. I just don't have a reference off the curb bar that you could work from. Let me know exactly what reference you want to measure to, and we can give you that so you can pull a tape. You're going to want to put that in so that you can put the Grace Ultra over before you start assembling anything. Now here I made a little mistake. I ran it going over this piece, but you can't put that piece in right away because you have to wait till we have the panels on. So I think it will be okay if you take the ice and water and just fold it over, and then we'll press this against it. That will do the same thing. I don't think there's a reason not to do that. And then here we're going to caulk to the concrete just to make sure we're sealed off to the concrete. They will come with their roofing later, and they may want to add another caulk over the top of this to complete their system, but that's up to them. And then again, a block to gauge our depth so we know where we're at with that, so that this piece can be adjusted up and down. This may be harder to hold than the one at the curb because we're really more concerned about our flashing matching our panel. But we could give a little bit and let this joint get a little wide if it helps keep this detail looking better for the roofing. That'll be something we figure out as we go along. The architects have marked up that they want to seal this support like the other one with the screw heads. I'm worried about the silicone contacting the Grace Ultra. I don't know if we should do that. I can try to find out on Monday. But in any case, it's actually a dry space. There's flashing over the top to make the barrier. It's not like the one at the curb where we're draining water past it. There shouldn't be any water in here. If we can, I will say go ahead and caulk it. But right now I'm torn it, so I keep not putting it on the drawings because I'm worried about it contacting the Grace Ultra. So I will check on that and let Zach know so he can let you know. So we've got our vapor barrier, that's what they call it, air and vapor, for the humid air inside the building. The orange is our backup seal, and then our exterior barrier is out here. Again, the concern was if somebody steps on this, so we want to make sure we bear out on the channel and that the clip is just holding it secure and that everything is held. I think it's pretty stout. I mean, with a rafter every 2 feet looking on the shop floor, it's like continuous metal everywhere you go. So it should be pretty strong. I don't expect there to be any problem. These screws are kind of as needed. I don't think you need to worry. If we don't have them, they're not going to affect anything. It says 2 per bay, but that's arbitrary, and you can disregard that. If we can get something in there, great. If not, that's okay too. If we had the right length, I'd even say you could go the other way through and screw this flashing to that and then caulk the head, but I'd probably better leave it out. This blue piece is a short piece, 3 inches, no, that's the screw, 8 inches long, so it's an intermittent clip to go through the caulk joint. And my worry was if somebody stepped here, this might pick up. I'm not worried so much about it bending down because it's going to get pretty solid as it gets caulked. If this is as solid as I think it is, we could debate removing this blue clip. You know, it's more important that we get a good caulk joint here as our backup joint, our backup line of defense for leakage, than having this for the panel. This panel's pretty stout. I don't expect any trouble, but we can look at that if you're having trouble trying to get it hooked on and then over here. I think it'll go. I think once you get hooked in here, it'll pivot and just clear. But let me know, and we can kind of look at that. So foot traffic, this was a bearing point, a little bit for downward, but mostly that it would want to pick up. But I don't think it's going to pick up. It really was pushing it to kind of even assume that would happen. Then this C shape would go in to set the height for our base flashing, and we can give you a measurement from the channel to there. And then that gets fastened, caulked, and then you put the stainless flashing in and caulk that, and then put the panel on. So hopefully that helps get you started. The big thing is that corner, and we do have to watch this piece when we get to the elevated corner section, but that'll be a later drawing. This is page 13. You see how the covers sit on the bar and they drain to the inside of the rafter. It's an overflow or freeze plug, whatever you want to call it. The thermal brake piece matches the glass. Seal it to the glass edge. Doesn't do any good if it's not sealed to it, otherwise air just circulates. So when you get to the panels at either end, they're caulked already, so this doesn't extend to the panel. There's some closures over the top of these walls. The walls are existing, they're not going anywhere, they've been open forever and look fine. This does not get sealed into all of the air barrier stuff we talked about. I think it's just a dust cover. And then it has a little shim here so that any condensate actually gets to the gutter rather than sits on this flashing. If you need two, if that makes more sense, stack up two of them and run the screw in. That'll be fine. So it's more about just letting condensate on the surface of the bar get past that flashing. Oops, sorry, having trouble there. When you get to the corner, which is frame 10.1, the concrete is built about 3 inches taller. 2 3/4, 2 7/8. I called it 3. It will be what it will be, kind of. So we have the same piece here. I'm not sure if they're going to do a gutter. And also, as we'll see in some pictures, let's see if we can look at one here. So here's your purlin coming in. So you're going to stop kind of on that line. And then here's your purlin coming. So I don't think there's anything over here. Nothing here. And then we have flashing coming that way. I guess that will be okay with what's there. I will come back to this picture a little bit later. This is just really an elevated crossbar detail. It's all the same as the other one, it's just higher up. This would be the curb at that same elevated 10.1 frame. And we haven't made an alternate detail yet because everything is made and it's on its way to you eventually. So we're going to want to do the same blocking to keep it because this angle is at the same height as the typical, even though the purlin and header raised up. So that's why we have a post here to push the skylight frame up where it needs to be. I've drawn the flashing at the valley coming through to give you an idea how some little flashing pieces go in so that we can seal this curb flashing to the valley flashing. And I've written in the codes. So when you get to this, it'll start to make sense as you fit the parts up. And then just bed it all in sealant. And I think as they revise this gutter, you might have to make a little angle piece here. I don't think it's more than 12 inches long. And then we can screw it to the flashing here and then caulk it to the underside. And we'll have recreated the same thing we're doing on the other end of the deal. At the low side of the typical curb detail. Again, you want your block, seal the support, and we should be okay. You still have your splash guard on this one. They might be a little longer, probably longer. And that's the valley flashing coming down. So when you go to line up the stepped frame with the typical frame, The curb bar center lines will line up perfectly. So if you were to look through this detail and see the other one, you would see another crossbar 3 inches below this one, but their center lines are exactly aligned. When you go to the crossbar, same thing. Crossbar with the adjacent frame is just 3 inches below, and the center line will align. But at the header, the crossbar is downhill from the other one. And that's because as this slope, which is at about 50 degrees, goes up the extra height, we lose width. So the support had to walk downhill, and I had to push the crossbar over to make room for the support. So if you go to measure, our 12 foot 11 is now 12 foot 10 and a 16th from the curb. And that tripped me up quite a few times, so pay attention to that when you're doing your layout, that this incline takes away some of our dimension. And this will have to change relative to your string line or whatever you're using as a reference. This bar shifted downhill. The panel profile stayed the same, I believe, but the curb bar moved because of this shift. Everything else should kind of happen the same way. And then we still got the channel, the bearing, may caulk it, may not. Your flashing here will match up. What we didn't talk about on page 12 was that this flashing, there's a piece with a little pocket in it. Caulk around the back of that pocket to get any welded seams covered in sealant. Bed it in sealant on the bottom of the rafter, and then take the typical angle that runs between rafters and set it in sealant against the concrete and the flashings, because that's what's going to create this leg of the barrier, is this other flashing that's out there. Those again are very critical. We can't have humid air migrating into this space. We want to keep it out here so that this is kind of a buffer and the cold is out here, and that this stuff stays as warm as it can. That's the header. I even put some codes here for the valley flashing coming to give you an idea where to terminate them. This one is cut to kind of go vertical. This may fit inside of it. You'll have to kind of fit it up as you go and see how things work with that. That makes it sound like we've made a mistake, but let me know and we'll have to look at it. We could probably cope it to get around this plate too. And you may have to strip in a little bit of the Grace Ultra water to tie that into the valley flashing up there. Speaking of the valley flashing, so you got one big base flat pan to catch water, and then you got a little curb flashing here. Nobody's asked for it on previous markups, but I think they probably will want us to put Grace Ultra along the top of here, on the top of the valley. They were rebuilding the concrete a few weeks ago, but I think it should have the Grace Ultra in here. Just seems to be that they want to cover the concrete surfaces with it. There is an air gap here, and I'm not sure what to do with it. I tend to think the best thing we can do is caulk these two flashings together, but let me know if that's a problem and we can see what else we can do. I can also argue to myself that if it would go through here, it's a little bit like the crossbar detail in that it doesn't need to be sealed up. It's not a perimeter condition. It's internal to the skylight, so if anything is there, if this would overflow, this would catch it. I don't know which is the worst answer. Leaving it open to catch any backup, or sealing it to prevent the air to get in here. It's not an easy call to make. This is the end rafter flashing, and these were the two purple surfaces that I marked on the very first page. I don't think anybody really understands what's going on here yet. At one time we were talking a lot of blocking, which is now not underneath our flashing, but our flashing needs something to mount to at the termination. So even if this part of the blocking isn't there, I think they still need a vertical leg so we can secure this pan, and something similar here so this pan can get secured and we lap the other one into it. This welded piece will need seams caulked over just like always, and then our typical base flashing, it'll slip in on it like a backer plate. So you can set that in sealant there as well. But the big thing is how to do this wood so that we have something to attach our flashing to. I would talk with the roofer a little bit to see what he's doing. But this is important to have that flashing there. Otherwise, there's not really much of a mounting surface to work with. There was no way to terminate the skylight without this detail. I don't think anybody else really understands how that's going to work. And because of the inclined plane at the header, it's kind of a big deal to make sure we get it sealed up tight. It's a little more clear on this one where we have the panels in. So we have a real complicated welded panel end, which then marries to the end rafter flashing. This is a stainless steel cap that goes on. This is your base flashing with the backer coming up. So this seals up like a panel, and we caulk. And then there's a little hidden caulk joint that goes here because we had to step back to get into the plane of the roof because the skylight is proud of the roof. So to make our barrier seal go from underneath the panel and then come up, we needed a little recessed caulk joint. And then once you're in the end rafter, then we're underneath this cap. You've got a leading edge here to seal, but I think you can bed that in sealant like we normally do. And it's similar at the curb, but a little bit easier to understand. So that's again a welded piece, caulk the seams, put it in, the cap covers the top edge, and then your caulk joint is going to just come along the bottom, go up this reveal, and then be bedded in sealant on the backer flashing. That may take a bit of explaining once you get there and people start to see this thing come together. I doubt anybody's gone as far as I have with how that works. Some of these roofing details aren't accurate, but I don't really know what they're planning to do with the roof. They've actually told me to stop drawing the roof into our details, so we're in the dark for a lot of stuff. Let me see what else I got here. I think that's about it. The only other thing I had was this is what the old gutter looked like, and they're going to have to build new. That's one of the outlets. There was a gutter at the valley. I'm assuming that would be mounted on the side again, but we have not really a cap flashing, but I'm not sure what they want to do with this. I think they stripped it all off before they realized they needed to keep it. This concrete should have been repaired. There was quite a gouge out of it. They've got a lot of learning to do to catch up to us, I think. So hopefully that helps. Call with any questions, and we'll talk to you soon.